If Tesla's stock is on a run, it seems like people have to take pot shots at it. Well, Prospect.org and the Washington Post are indeed doing so, and they're using full self-driving as their straw man. Let's take a look. Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. I will of course leave a link to all these articles in the description so you can check them out as you will. I'm not going to be particularly encouraging of that today because I think that these articles are deserving of scorn rather than you reading them. But of course, that is your choice if you want to take a look at them. Of course, you should obviously dig into things and do your own research. So if you feel like doing that, you should definitely do that. I just don't want to particularly reward the people who are writing these articles for doing so. So again, your choice as to what you want to do, and I will of course leave the links because of course that's what I should do so that you can track them down if you're interested. But I'll go into, I think, enough detail to describe what's going on here today. So we have an article from prospect.org in their justice section. Interestingly enough, that's the prospect.org/justice is where this is actually located. And it's by Ryan Cooper, dated today as I record this video, probably tomorrow when I release it. Anyway, Tesla's full self-driving system, in quotes, should never have been allowed on the road. Elon Musk's, his automatic driving technology seems to be roughly an order of magnitude more deadly than human drivers. That sounds pretty bad, right? And it's the kind of thing where if you don't pay too much attention, you just read the headline, you read a couple of paragraphs, you're going to be convinced that this is actually correct information. Just so you understand where Ryan is coming from, I'm going to start at the end of this article. At any rate, it is long since time that the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, or NHTSA, and other regulators took a much harder line with automakers. We need more regulations to protect pedestrians from oversized trucks, stricter ways to control rampant speeding, and a great deal more skepticism about whiz-bang computer gimmicks. By the way, none of this stuff except potentially whiz-bang computer gimmicks, because it's not a gimmick, it's an actual thing that works, but none of this stuff was discussed in the article. When I teach writing, I always say, what are you doing opening a can of worms in the last paragraph? You want to conclude things, you don't just want to throw open Pandora's box and start what would be 5 or 6 new articles in your concluding paragraph. It's a big mistake on his part from a writing standpoint. So as a writing teacher, I scold him for this. And then this last part here just shows off an amazing animosity towards Elon Musk as a person rather than even dealing with Tesla as a corporate entity. And Elon Musk in particular needs to be taken down a peg. For far too long, he has barged ahead with dangerous, half-baked technology in Teslas, lying out both sides of his mouth, relying on his inflated Tony Stark reputation and regulator timidity to get away with it. People are dead as a result, and it needs to stop. So yeah, that's where Ryan Cooper is coming from. I will let you read his own personal description, his bio of himself if you want to. I think it's kind of appropriate to where we're going. But anyway, it is clearly coming from a place of personal animosity. This is more along the lines of Tesla Q-type arguments, of course, blanketed in something that makes it look like it's scientific and accurate. So there are several paragraphs I'm not even going to cover. I'm not going to read this article in its full entirety. Like I said, if you're interested, you're welcome to do so. But anyway, we get to the meat of it around here. Now we learn from an analysis of the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, or NHTSA, data conducted by the Washington Post, which is interesting because, of course, he's utilizing somebody else's research to do this, and we're going to talk about that in just a second, that those systems, particularly FSD, are associated with dramatically more crashes than previously thought. Thanks to a 2021 regulation, automakers must disclose data about crashes involving full self-driving or driver assistance technology. Since that time, Tesla has racked up at least 736 crashes, causing 17 fatalities. This technology should never have been allowed on the road, and regulators should be taking a much harder look at driver assistance features in general, requiring manufacturers to prove that they actually improve safety rather than trusting the word of a duplicitous oligarch. So again, we've got personal animosity here rearing its ugly head. Remember that Tesla is not Elon Musk. There's 120-ish thousand people that work for them. And so he is not ultimately purely responsible for anything going on here. It's a company decision. It's a corporate decision, not his decision. And before I turn to the Washington Post article, because that's what you should always do, when someone bases their article on some other article or some supposed research thing, you should look at that. That's what you should do. And the internet makes it very easy. You just click the link and go for it. Anyway, we've got this big boldface thing. The Post report is full of crashes that a human driver should have been able to avoid, like running into a motorcycle that the automatic system apparently failed to recognize. Now, I do remember that crash in particular. That was very tragic, and it's super sad. So I don't want to make light of any of these crashes. But after reading the Washington Post article, there's only 2 or 3 actual actual crashes that they described. So full of crashes that a human driver should have been able to avoid is a pretty big exaggeration for what's actually contained in the article. So let's turn to the Washington Post article itself. 17 fatalities, 736 crashes, the shocking toll of Tesla's Autopilot. Tesla's driver assistance system, known as Autopilot, actually it's full self-driving beta, but I assume that they're lumping in the older version of Autopilot as well in order to maximize the number of crashes and fatalities they're talking about here. Anyway, it's been involved in far more crashes than previously reported, and this is by Faiz Siddiqui, and sorry if I mispronounced that name. Anyway, this is from just a couple of days ago on June 10th. So of course, following the "if it bleeds, it leads" mantra, you've got an immediate grabber with a story about someone being hit by a Tesla that didn't yield to a school bus that had its red warning lights on. And in defense of this, I have seen Teslas, people have shown videos of this, that actually do show the Tesla try to go around school buses with the red flashing light. I don't know if that's so much the case anymore, but there have been places where it has attempted to do that kind of a thing with a school bus before. I have not experienced that myself, but for whatever reason, I don't tend to follow school buses that much in the morning and the afternoon when they have their signs out. So anyway, this incident is related to a known issue, but remember that this is level 2 full self-driving. This is an ADAS system. It might have actually been running Autopilot at the time. We don't know. And Autopilot will not stop for anything. It's not designed for that. That's a basic kind of ADAS system where you are completely in charge. It will lane keep and it will go the speed that you tell it to go, and it will not hit traffic in front of it, but it's not designed to actually drive in an environment. And so I don't know the particulars of this incident, but if it was the case that it was Autopilot and not full self-driving beta, then the driver himself, and in any case, the driver is responsible. Always the driver is responsible for these sort of things. But in that case, the car would not even have ostensibly stopped in that sort of situation. It would have just gone ahead anyway, because that's what the basic Autopilot sort of thing that you get with the car without paying extra for it includes. Now, we don't know from this story what the particulars are. Maybe it was driving full self-driving beta. It doesn't really matter in this case because, of course, the driver, especially around a school bus that has its sign out and stuff, that's your responsibility. That's the kind of thing where it's like being around pedestrians or cyclists or motorcycles or something like that. You just have to be particularly careful about those situations. Those are the ones where you have to be the most aware. And if the driver wasn't, that's the driver's fault. It is not the fault of the full self-driving. So anyway, moving on with this, we can see that again, we've got this sort of breathless attitude towards this article. The crash in North Carolina's Halifax County, where a futuristic technology came barreling down a rural highway with devastating consequences. So, right, it's pretty emotional language here. This does not give you expectations that the article is going to be a fairly reasonably written article. It does ultimately end up presenting both sides of things, but it kind of buries a lot of the most important aspects. Anyway, the important statistic here is that there were 736 US crashes since 2019 involving Teslas in autopilot mode. So again, remember, this is autopilot. This is not full self-driving beta. This includes all of the different ADAS systems. Then we get to this sentence that actually probably deserves more attention than it gets in the article. The number of such crashes has grown over the past 4 years, the data shows, reflecting the hazards associated with increasing use of Tesla's driver assistance technology, as well as the growing presence of the cars on the nation's roadways. So I think that doesn't get enough attention here, and I'm going to talk more about it. But as you get more and more cars, as Tesla is going from, thousands of cars on the road to tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands to somewhere around 1 million vehicles in the United States right now, that means that you're going to have statistically more accidents. It's just a thing that's going to happen. If you only have 1,000 cars, there's only so many miles that those cars can drive. If you have 1 million of those cars, that's orders of magnitude bigger, so you're going to get orders of magnitude more accidents. It's just the nature of large numbers. Then, unfortunately, we get to a paragraph that I can't cross-check because I don't have NHTSA's information. At this point, I don't know. We'll have to sort of take this as a given sort of thing. But again, they don't present their data sources, and that is not very good journalism because they should be very careful to present exactly how they're making these statements, because these statements are very important statements. Anyway, the number of deaths and serious injuries associated with autopilot has also grown significantly, the data shows. When authorities first released a partial accounting of accidents involving autopilot in June 2022, they counted only 3 deaths definitively linked to the technology. The most recent data includes at least 17 fatal incidents, 11 of them since May of 2022, and 5 serious injuries. So those are significant numbers if we are to believe them. We don't know exactly. Again, there's not a division between autopilot and full self-driving beta, so we don't know which version of the software was operating, assuming that these were all true. But again, we're looking at massive new numbers of these vehicles being on the road. So the statistics are going to increase. The raw numbers, not the statistics, the raw numbers are going to increase clearly as you go orders of magnitude more cars on the road. So again, we don't know because there's not evidence that directly shows where they got these numbers from. But assuming that they're true, there is going to be an increase of the number of accidents and the number of fatalities. Sadly enough, that's a tragic sort of situation. But as you have more cars on the road, there are going to be more fatalities. Now, the interesting aspect of this, of course, is that they don't really talk about human drivers. Human drivers have caused a lot more than 17 fatal accidents in the past year. And ultimately, this argument doesn't come down to, will Tesla's full self-driving beta be able to drive perfectly without ever injuring or killing a person? No, it won't. That's just, the reality is far too complicated. The goal here is to make it safer than human drivers. So less accidents, less fatalities per million miles driven, or that sort of statistic. You're never going to get perfection, but if you can get it safer than humans, then that's what needs to be on the road driving rather than humans. Opposite of that, of course, is the case being made by both the Washington Post article and especially the Prospect.org article, is that this should be taken off the roads because, I don't know. Supposedly it's less safe than human drivers, but we're going to get into that in just a second. So continuing on, and forgive the dramatic thunder rumbles if they happen. There's a pretty good sized storm going on outside. If you get some dramatic thunder rumbles, it's just a little bonus to this video. Anyway, Tesla Chief Executive Officer Elon Musk, actually Techno King, so they got that wrong, has said that cars operating in Tesla's autopilot mode are safer than those piloted solely by human drivers, citing crash rates when the modes of driving are compared. He has pushed the car maker to develop and deploy features programmed to maneuver the roads, navigating school buses, fire engines, stop signs, pedestrians, arguing that the technology will usher in a safer, virtually accident-free future. While it's impossible to say how many crashes may have been averted, the data shows clear flaws in the technology being tested in real time on America's highways. So number one, you don't know. There is no statistic for people who are alive now or uninjured now because of Tesla's autopilot or other ADAS systems. That is just unfortunately the way statistics work. You only find out when a bad thing happens. You don't tend to find out when a good thing happens. There are situations where the car certainly has avoided accidents, has avoided hurting people, things like that, but we'll never really know about that because the bias is always towards the other news. It's just a non-event when somebody doesn't get hurt, right? So it's not really anybody's fault that you don't know this, but you do have to remember the fact that all of the injuries and crashes and things like that that could have happened and didn't happen are not registered in this. So you only find out about the bad stuff. Next, Tesla's 17 fatal crashes reveal distinct patterns, the Post found. 4 involved a motorcycle, another involved an emergency vehicle. Meanwhile, some of Musk's decisions, such as widely expanding the availability of the features and stripping the vehicles of radar sensors, appear to have contributed to the reported uptick in incidents, according to experts who spoke with the Post. No experts, no sources, don't know. I don't know why they have that particular thing in mind, that somehow stripping low resolution radar out of the system made the more fatalities happen. Don't know that. Low resolution radar, by the way, generally will not see a human being in front of it. That's the kind of reality of it. So those systems are really good at detecting cars in front of you. They're not so good at detecting a human being, at least not until you get really, really up close to that person. And at that point, if you're driving any kind of reasonable speed, you're going to hit that person anyway. We do get this from NHTSA. NHTSA said a report of a crash involving driver assistance does not itself imply the technology was the cause. That's important. NHTSA has an active investigation into Tesla Autopilot, including full self-driving. Spokeswoman Veronica Morales said, noting that the agency doesn't comment on open investigations. NHTSA reminds the public that all advanced driver assistance systems require the human driver to be in control and fully engaged in the driving task at all times. Accordingly, all state laws hold the human driver responsible for the operation of their vehicles, and that is in fact the case. And to this article's credit, it does have an Elon Musk quote here, and it's an extensive one, and it's a very important one. At the point at which you believe that adding autonomy reduces injury and death, I think you have a moral obligation to deploy it, even though you're going to get sued and blamed by a lot of people. And generally, that's that negative bias thing. You don't know about the people who've been saved, only those who have been injured or killed, which is unfortunate. Again, I don't want to make light of any of that, but it is really important that he says that this is a moral issue. And for Elon Musk, who is radically honest, a lot of people don't understand this, but he's radically honest. Everybody, and that's why that other article, the prospect.org article, where it says it's lying out both sides of his mouth, it's like he's optimistic. He clearly has an optimism bias. Yeah, that's for sure. He admits that too, but he is honest as much as he can be. And if you look at Tesla's 5-star safety ratings, best cars, most safe cars ever made, these systems are part of that, working towards getting the cars to be as safe as possible, not just for the occupants of the vehicle itself, but for the people around the vehicle as well. And it's important to remember that Elon Musk and Tesla, so it's not just about him, but the company itself is all about safety. They say that safety is their #1 priority above everything else. Then we get a quote from Missy Cummings, who is a former NHTSA senior safety advisor. She was sort of booted out of that because it became clear that she has a lot of investment with companies that make LiDAR, and therefore she had to back down from that position. But they still have her quote in here, and of course it is negative towards Tesla. And also important to note here is it is unclear whether the data captures every crash involving Tesla's driver assistance systems. NHTSA's data includes some incidents in which it is unknown whether autopilot or full self-driving was in use. Those include 3 fatalities, including one last year. So it is possible that there are incidents here that are included in this situation in the data that do not actually involve autopilot. And there's a bunch more in this article as well, but I want to turn to the one figure that they actually show, which is Tesla versus other automakers and the number of accidents per quarter. So it's unclear what other makers is again. So this is just really, really unfortunate, because it's rather unfortunate that we don't know what the comparisons are. And the fact of the matter is that if you have a company like GM or Ford or Toyota or something, a lot of times they don't even know whether the car was in ADAS mode or not at the time of the collision. They might eventually be able to find out by plugging something into the vehicle and looking at what was going on just before the crash, but it's a very intensive process, whereas Tesla automatically gets over-the-air information about the crash, assuming it wasn't so bad that the vehicle was damaged or something, in which case they would have to go and, recover the black box essentially. But what I'm saying is that they have a lot more information than most companies, and they have it much more immediately about what has happened. So their reporting is going to be more accurate and probably more thorough than any other reporting that goes on. But still, you can see that Tesla, is involved in more crashes per quarter. A good part is it looks like 2023 Q1, it actually went down a little bit, but also Q4 of every year is generally the worst of every quarter. In fact, you can see that the little orange, peach colored, whatever, the other makers one, it also goes up in Q4 of 2024. So there's kind of a seasonal trend where the end of the year, there are more crashes and stuff. So anyway, you're generally going to see that happen. But what we don't get here is any information about the number of miles driven per incident. That's the problem. We've got these raw numbers, but we don't know whether they're comparing 800,000 or 900,000 Tesla vehicles to 10,000 other ADAS manufactured vehicles. We just don't have that information. And so the problem is that we're looking at these numbers that are raw numbers, but they're not really very useful. They make it look bad for Tesla, but they don't clarify how many miles were driven, how many cars are we talking about, how many incidents per car, how many incidents per mile of driving. That is the most important statistics. And that's why we are going to look at Tesla's 2022 impact report, because they actually spell it right out for us. So here you go. You've got 1.53 collisions or accidents per million miles driven for the total US vehicle fleet. And note, this is based on their data of Tesla vehicles and NHTSA's data of all vehicles in the fleet. So anyway, 1.53 accidents per million miles, which is already pretty darn good. I mean, we're amazing considering we weren't evolved to drive. But anyway, if you have a Tesla vehicle with no active safety features, it's 0.68. So in other words, you're just driving it yourself and you're just cruising along. It does have passive safety features built in. It has things that will attempt to avoid collisions and stuff if possible. But anyway, just in the basic mode, if you're driving it just like like a normal car, you're already at around half of the amount of accidents per million miles than the total US fleet. If you include full self-driving beta engaged, which is mostly non-highway miles, so remember this is 2022, so at that point in 2022, we didn't have version 11 of the software available, and that's the one that rolled full self-driving beta into the highway stack. So I would assume that this number is going to come down in 2023 as we get full self-driving beta engaged on highways, in which you can rack up a lot more miles with many fewer accidents. Anyway, but that's 0.31. So again, that's half as much as Teslas with no safety features active. And then if you look at autopilot on the highway, you've got 0.18 accidents per million miles. And again, it's on the order of a half. I know it's a little bit more than that, but again, it's on the order of 1/2 of the miles for full self-driving beta. But in any case, this is Tesla's official impact report from 2022. This is an official document. This is not the kind of thing where they can lie to the public about this. If this data is shown to be false and there was a malicious intent behind publishing this data, a lot of people could go to jail about this. So this is not something to be taken lightly. They're not just publishing this and just saying like, oh yeah, we think this. They're like, this is the data. And if they misrepresent this and they do it intentionally, people can go to jail about this. So here you can see Tesla's own data that on the highway, their autopilot is around 1 order of magnitude safer than the total US vehicle fleet. If you want to be a little bit more, fair with the comparison, you could use the 0.31 statistic because that's mostly non-highway miles. So that's going to bump things up, but that's still 1/5 of the total US vehicle fleet accident rate. So that is significantly lower than what we've got. And that's where Elon Musk says 1/5, 5 times safer than the US vehicle fleet. He's not even using their best data, which would be 0.18, which is actually almost 10 times safer. He's actually talking about full self-driving beta and the official data that's published by Tesla for 2022. And again, that figure is going to get better in 2023 because with full self-driving version 11, that's being used on highways now too, which means you can drive hundreds of miles very, very rapidly and rack up more miles without accidents. So let's quickly turn back to this prospect.org article. The first thing I want to show you is how completely wrong this person is. He says here, this result shouldn't be surprising, in other words, more crashes and things. When it comes to full self-driving, Elon Musk's decision to remove LiDAR, light detection and ranging, sensors, and rely exclusively on cameras to see where the car is going have made the system demonstrably worse. So first of all, Teslas have never had LiDAR in them ever. They have had radar, but also it's not demonstrably worse than it was before. That is, again, I checked the link. They're not really saying that. They're just saying that there is a chance that that could be true, not demonstrably. And then of course we get that's surely part of the reason why Teslas account for fully 91% of all self-driving related crashes in the NHTSA data. Not the possibility that they're actually more than 90% of the vehicles that are driving on ADAS systems that are reporting. That's not even considered to be a possibility. It's surely just that they've removed LiDAR from their cars, which they never had in the first place. Anyway, to finish off, let's just read 2 other paragraphs here. Others, perhaps taken in by Musk's overheated hype about the quality of Tesla technology, simply trust the system mindlessly. 2 men died in 2019 when they let their Tesla drive around with nobody in the driver's seat, and it crashed into a tree. So I want to set the record straight here. There was evidence that one of the people was in fact in the driver's seat. ADAS or autopilot was never engaged in the car. The person just drove way, way, way too fast. I looked up all of the information again just to check, but the current version of this accident is just a tragic accident where people were being stupid. They weren't wearing seatbelts. They were in the front seat. When they hit the tree and they drove themselves into the tree, they bounced off of the dashboard and so forth and flew into the back seat. So that's the unfortunate reality. So this idea that this car was driving around with nobody in the front seat and somehow it was driving that fast is completely a false story. And then we get to, indeed, Tesla's insistence that drivers always pay attention is as much protection from legal liability as it is anything else. All, quote, state laws hold the human driver responsible for the operation of their vehicles, end quote, a NHTSA person told the Post. A very convenient shield. So how is that a convenient shield when the law already exists? Tesla is working within the law. They have never said that this car would drive on its own and that you don't have to pay attention. In fact, literally every time you push the stalk down twice, it says you have to keep your hands on the wheel. Before you can engage full self-driving beta for the first time, you have to read a document that says I am responsible for all of this. This is the law. It's not a convenient shield. It's just the law at this point. Now, I think eventually Elon Musk is going to take responsibility and say, and I should say Tesla is going to take responsibility, but Elon has definitely said this before. So I think about him when he talks about this. But he has said that they will take legal responsibility for the cars at some point, and they will take the hit if an accident happens with the vehicle driving in full self-driving mode. So that is something that he has talked about, but that is not the case right now, and it is not going to be the case tomorrow or next week or next month. So what we have here are two articles, and there's kind of a classic system here. You've got the one article in the Washington Post that has breathless headlines, that bleeds it leads kind of a headline. But when you dig into it, at least it has some reasonableness to it, and it presents at least some indication that the statistics could be what they are. Then, of course, you move on to the prospect.org article that just references the other one really quickly because they know almost nobody is going to click the link and look at the original article, especially because the WAPO article is behind a paywall. And they can then say whatever they want. You know, this is the kind of thing where you can make it sound as bad as possible and people will say, oh, the Washington Post said this. Well, they didn't really say that. And this is exaggerating things and just basically a personal hit piece against Elon Musk, not really anything to do with the technology itself. And then, of course, most egregiously, they don't even go to Tesla's impact report. It took me all of about a minute to click the impact report, look at the table of contents, figure out the page it was on, go to that page and look at the actual statistics presented by Tesla. At least they should present those statistics as other evidence when they're talking about NHTSA investigations and actual numbers of people who've been hit. Should Tesla publish the raw numbers? Yeah, it would be nice if they would do that. They probably are not going to, because again, they probably don't want to say they're involved in 500 accidents or something, because the raw numbers sound bad. But if you consider how many accidents human beings are involved in, you know, every day, every week, it's way outstrips that kind of accident rate. So for their sake, it's much better to present this as a statistical argument, and it makes a lot more sense. So anyway, neither one of these two articles presented the data to back up Tesla's claim. What they did instead was they just went, you know, the Washington Post article wasn't great, but then the prospect.org article just referenced that and went off the deep end about it and created a hit piece against Elon Musk. All right, I'm glad I got that off my chest. I was kind of pissed when I read this stuff. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video and found it fun and interesting and thought-provoking. If you did, please do like the video so other people can find it. And of course, consider subscribing for more of this kind of content. As always, a huge shout out to my patrons on Patreon, my YouTube channel members, and my Twitter subscribers as well. Thank you all so much for supporting the channel in any way that you can. And of course, if you want to join any of them, just check out the links in the description. And if you're interested in a whole bunch of really cool merch, check out our merch store. Link is in the description. We have TeslaBot t-shirts, the Tesla meme t-shirt, Success is a Possible Outcome, 4680 battery cells. All of that stuff is on t-shirts, mugs, tumblers, and on. So check it out. And finally, don't forget we are both Tesla and Amazon affiliates. If you click the link in the description and go shopping for a new Tesla, a solar roof, a Powerwall, or anything on Amazon, it helps out the channel. Thank you so much. In the meantime, I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.